Do you have a dream that is a small seed of an idea and it's ready to sprout?
Or are you in the workplace weeds and you need to bloom in a new creative way?
Perhaps you're ready to embrace and grow a more vibrant, joyful, and authentic life. If you answered yes to any of these, you are ready to rebloom. Welcome to the podcast where we have enlightening chats with nature lovers, makers, and artisans as they share inspiring stories about pivoting to a heart-centered passion.
Hello, I'm Lori Siebert, and I am very curious to hear from friends and artisans about the creativity that blooms when you follow your heart.
And I'm Jamie Jameson, and I want to dig deep into the why behind each courageous leap of faith and walk through new heart-centered gardens.
Each episode of Rebloom will be an in-depth conversation with guests who, through self-discovery, shifted to share their passions with the world.
Get ready to find your creative joy as we plant the seeds for you to rebloom. Well, hello, everyone. This is Jamie Jameson.
And this is Lori Siebert.
And welcome to another edition of Rebloom. And today, this one is so special to me and very personal because we are welcoming my mentor, the person that has really guided me along every step of my journey, Kim Klassen. Welcome, Kim. How are you today?
Oh, hello. Thank you. Okay, we can't cry at the beginning, but that was very sweet.
No, Kim is, I'm going to tell you all, Kim's going to tell you all about Kim, but she's from Canada. We met, 10 years ago,
2011.
Yeah, a while ago. And she was one of the first people that I had followed on social media. I think it was definitely pre-Instagram. And we were able to meet at a retreat, and I fangirled all over her, and we became friends, and we have been friends ever since. And I am just so excited. We are so excited for you to hear her beautiful story. And let me give you a little background about Kim. I'll brag on her. She is a photographer, a filmmaker. She loves film. She's amazing at tech. She always gets me out of a jam. She's a content creator. In addition, personally, a wife, a mother, and a grandmother, or a Mimi, a Lolly. She does say that she's an introvert. And, it's interesting, this beautiful space that we have lets introverts really shine. She's a podcaster, a Lightroom teacher, and she finds the coolest stuff out there. Trust me, I've been to her studio. It's fabulous. I covet many of the things that she has. And she's a creative coach. So anybody who needs that extra help creatively, she's the one you want to call, because she certainly has helped me along the way. So welcome, my dear friend.
Thank you.
I'm just meeting you, Kim. So I'm so excited to hear your story.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here. It's kind of funny because I don't know if that ping will show up in your intro of me. Did you hear my phone?
I didn't.
I'm the tech person. And I know exactly how that should not happen. I have no idea how it happened. So I love that happened. Actually.
Well, we've had pings, we've had freezing, we are, it's funny in this whole podcasting because talk about reblooming. Lori and I are reblooming in every aspect tech, and it's
every
almost
time
comical.
We go to record, we rebloom again.
Yeah, and we rebloom and we rebloom again.
Oh, well, so good. I love it.
Let's start with let's talk about your creative journey. You're from Canada, and tell us about how you tell us about your creative path. Where did it start?
Well, okay, so I'm from Canada. I'm in the town with no stoplight, as you mentioned, which isn't that rare around where I am. I'm in the prairies, and I actually live in the town that I grew up in from grade 6, which is kind of funny. And I live in the house that I said I would live in. When I was a teenager, I'm like, I want to live in that house. And weirdly, I'm in that house. Of course, it wasn't an immediate journey. It was a roundabout journey. Anyhow, I wasn't creative at all growing up or in school, but I had like these quiet qualities. So I would kind of just retreat into myself. And then I got married super young, like I was 21, wanted to have babies, you know, I want to get married, I want to have babies, I used to say to my husband. And then I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I had one job, and I worked at it was a Canadian department store called Eaton's, which was so beautiful, and it's since gone. It was a family company. I worked there from grade 9 till I had my first son. No, till I had Bryce, and I would go to work crying. So I had 2 boys, and I would leave the house crying.
Oh boy.
Because I didn't want to leave them. And
Yeah.
so then, long story short, I ended up opening up a daycare. And that was my way that I could stay home and be with them. And then I started like doing little crafty things. Do you guys remember Country Sampler or Country Folk Art?
Yes.
I would buy
Yes.
all of those and all the little knick-knacky, remember all the country things, and remember geese, and do you remember all of that?
Yes.
So I used to love that, and I wanted it in our old house because it's like an old 120-year-old brick house, right? So I wanted it to be very country. So I started painting little folk arty things, and that kind of led to craft sales. And then it led to buying painting magazines. Maybe, Lori, you would have bought them like with patterns and designs. Like,
right. Yep. Like
and,
toile, like
yeah,
furniture
all of
painting.
those. Yeah. And I was like, who are these people doing this in the magazine? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like they get to do this. So I, out of the blue, called some random person in the United States and asked her on the phone, because
there was no internet. Yeah.
Right? And she told me everything. Like, she told me exactly what to do. Contact the paint company, the brush company, all of this. So I ended up, that was my first big thing, is I got free brushes, free paints, all the surfaces, and I got paid for these designs. And then I was so blindly naive. I was just like, do you want me to do a series? I wasn't even very good. But yet they were like, yeah. And so I got these, I'd be in these magazines, have these series, and I just had this lovely business happening, and I could be at home. And my dad built me a studio at the time in our garage. And I think it was because they were horrified that I was doing it in the dining room. Like I had like wood stain and, you know, plastic tablecloths.
A true artist everywhere.
Yeah. And then, so that was kind of that. And then I realized, oh, there's this licensing thing. What is this? Like, how could I this is a lot, making all of these things on repeat, because I was also selling on eBay. And I just out of the blue, like, again, I think I emailed an artist on this publishing page, and she's like, yeah, this is what you do. I sent them an email. And then I got a licensing company / publisher. So I would start painting. And back then you actually painted on the sign, right? And you would ship them. So I still have in my basement, like I'm talking, I could build a wall with all of these signs because I'd ship them. They would photograph them and then send them back. So I have all of these very country signs. Like I don't really want to, but I can't really part with them, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was happening, and it was amazing. And then amongst all of that, our kids just grow up, and I had 2 boys, and Bryce became a teenager. He's my younger son, and he started to kind of just go down a really dark path with alcohol and drugs, and I just kind of froze. I couldn't paint. I just couldn't do it anymore. I would literally sit. I would just sit in this chair and like wait for whatever awful thing might happen next. And and it went on and on and on. Yeah. And I had this silly Nikon, and it's funny because I bought a Nikon camera based on Ashton Kutcher at the time was in an ad on TV for this exact camera. God. So I'm like, well, that looks like a good one. So I bought that Nikon. That was my first entry Nikon. But all I did with it is like, it was an auto, and I would take a picture of the sign to send to the publisher. No idea, what you were doing,
nothing.
Interest,
yeah.
Like clueless. But then one day, as I'm kind of in this in between, I'm on the internet, and I would see these beautiful photos. Do you remember the blogging days when that's what we
Yes.
did? And I'd see these gorgeous photos. And I remember even saying to a licensing friend, I would love to, like, what if you could take photos instead? Because at that time, art was going digital too. Like it
Right.
was becoming more, you had to do it digitally. And I was really resistant to that, which is funny now, thinking how I left that. And anyhow, I had this camera and I would see pictures and I'm like, I wonder how they do that. And I took this camera on a walk amongst all of the darkness, took a picture of this tree. I came back and I popped the card into the card reader and I opened Photoshop. I had bought this $1,000 program at the time. There was no subscription. You had to buy Photoshop.
Yeah.
And I bought it thinking I'd eventually learn how I could license, like do it digitally. And I put it in there and then I put a texture
Yes.
on top because I was starting to explore that from the photography end. And that was it. I was hooked. And then I just started like boldly blogging about it like I knew what I was doing.
But and I think that's how I connected with you, because you were painting those textures. I connected with you not after your country phase, and then you went into the textures.
Yeah.
But I remember looking in magazines saying, how is this done? What is this? And I was learning. I think we all, seek out things, particularly if we have a hobby or something. And I remember thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. And those textures were beautiful, but it sort of built on what you were doing initially. You started with the painting and then
by accident, really. Like it was like, I'm like, I'd like to do mixed media. So I started kind of doing, and then they just kind of morphed. Like, I love that though, right? When we follow just being curious and we have no idea, like we think we're planning what's going to come next, right? Like we're like, have it figured out, but it's just, if we follow it and then all of a sudden, it like reveals itself.
I love serendipity and just, I don't know, things coming together that you didn't expect.
Yeah. And that was also what I loved about like those days, being maybe younger, or also we didn't have the vastness of knowledge like we have on the internet now, is just, I was so really clueless a lot of the time. Like I didn't know that I was being like kind of bold to put my, like, it was just very,
you just did it.
Yeah.
You just
like
did
that
it.
Not knowing what you don't know stage is actually a really lovely stage, but harder to be in because of the internet. Because what we tend to do is, oh, maybe I'll do this. Now I'm going to go look at everything I need to know before I start.
Right. Right. And sometimes if you just, and particularly back then, because it was pre-Instagram, pre-social, a lot of pre-social, it was more print publications. But yeah, I mean, you could still reach a human being. You could reach you could send a letter, you could send via email your imagery and send something out. But also, I think you have always had, I know this from knowing you for so many years, a beautiful aesthetic. And so it was always different. I believe that you were always maybe one step ahead of where a trend was or a curve. So when you sent things out, I guarantee those editors were like, whoa,
maybe,
what's this?
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Well, and we had met, as we had said, about 10 years ago. We were at a photography conference. And I just remember you being there and
hiding in the corner.
She was so petrified. She's an introvert. And there's probably nothing worse than a retreat with, I don't know, 80 women.
Oh, yeah. It was crazy. I can't, like my kids took bets I wouldn't go. Like that I would come up with a reason not to go.
But it's funny because I think about that retreat and talk about afraid. I went with my friend and I wanted to go. I wanted to meet you. I knew I needed to go. There were sometimes in my life I've known that I needed to do something. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And like you, I showed up at that retreat with my camera on automatic. Yep. There's no way. I didn't even know manual. I'm like, oh, I don't know how to use this. Like, I mean, I had no clue what I was doing. Yeah. But it was just the act of going and meeting people and having those experiences. I'm still friends with many of the women
Right?
from that retreat 10 years ago.
Yeah,
and it was 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, that was lovely. And I think there was a lot of people at that time just showing up with cameras, like not knowing what to do.
Don't you feel like, I mean, I feel this way when I'm teaching or just around other creative spirits, that you raise one another up by sharing what everybody knows, a little bit of something different. And like, I'll go to retreats thinking I'm going to teach one thing, and I go away learning like 5,000 other things that I didn't expect. Everything from a new type of pen that they love to, I just learned about a shampoo that I need to be using on my, it's like that I think is the beauty of going boldly, because I am also an introvert, and when I'm in those groups, I'm exhausted. Like, I just came back from one, and
I'm happy.
I had to nap like all day yesterday just to recoup.
Oh yeah.
But I also come away with like a list of new books to read, or new types of things to listen to or eat, or like all of it.
Oh yeah, all the things. Like, yeah. I think we're good at showing up like that as women. Like here's all the things. Like, but you have to have your people to do that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you have to have an open heart. And it was not that retreat, but it was another shortly thereafter that Kim actually ran. So she went from running from people to actually running a retreat. And we were in California, and it was smaller. Granted, Kim, it was smaller. But I remember she said, "You need to get on Instagram." I'm like, "Oh, no, I don't want another platform." I remember complaining about it. But she challenged me, and she's like, and again, like you said, Lori, it's people kind of bringing something to you. I was there for a photography retreat, not necessarily thinking that I would pivot in that direction. And that has opened up an entire new world just by that encouragement. Yeah.
I mean, that was huge for you, because you literally went away and committed to it every day of your life since. Almost, right?
Yeah.
Like, literally left there and started
every day. And what has opened up to me professionally, but more so personally, because of that, and the connections that have been made have been incredible. But that was just a simple, it was like, hey, get this book title to read or listen to this song. But it was like, and it was not a huge conversation. It was like, no, you really needed to give this a try.
And by the door,
and I'm like, oh. And I remember, but I do think that we tend to kind of push back. And when we're given suggestions, particularly if it seems out of our comfort zone, and that was a little out of my comfort zone. And I specifically remember that conversation, and I thought, okay, I'll commit to a month, because the retreat was at the end of the year. And I thought, all right, I'll commit to a month. Let me see where it goes. And I did. I posted every day. And I thought, well, that wasn't too hard. Maybe I'll commit to a year. And I haven't stopped since. And that was 2015.
I know. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And so that little tiny little nudge. See what you did?
Yeah, we don't know. It's always, right? Like constant little
nudges
dropped and shared, and
little gifts along the way. So I digress into my own reblooming, but so you were doing the photography, you were doing the backgrounds that you were selling, and then all of a sudden Instagram and the internet and everything kind of started to converge. What happened to your world? Yeah.
Well, I would say, so I went from doing the textures, selling the textures, and then I did teach this Photoshop class called the Skinny Mini, which, how would I have called it that? Like, what was I thinking? Oh my goodness. Okay, but just briefly on that, this is crazy. I'm going to teach a class online, and oh my gosh, the sound was terrible. I did it on what was called Blogspot at the time. Nothing was refined. It was just, but yet it worked. People were curious, and it was early days. It was lovely time back then too, those early days before everyone starts doing it. And so I did that for a while, and the whole thing, Photoshop. And then Lightroom kind of came along in the mix, and I resisted it for a long time. And then I fell in love with Lightroom, but I also fell in love with going from these heavy textured photos to styling photos, first in my house. And that was a pivot right there, because I had these people in love with like that version of me, the one who made textures and applied them very heavily to the photos. And at times I feel like I was hiding the photo by adding a texture, like the photo wasn't great, but add the texture. And then I just became more and more pulled into like making beautiful images. And so I had, for the longest time, I'd be like making a textured photo to keep those people happy on my blog and have textures, but my heart wasn't there at all. And I remember finally saying, this is ridiculous. Like, and I had to like kind of rip the Band-Aid and say, actually, this is what I'm doing now. And it wasn't for everyone, I'll tell you. There was a lot of people who were like, okay, bye. Cause like, you know, we just want you to stay here doing this. And it was a big deal, but thinking of like, if I had stayed in that, like how it felt very smothering. Like I just was like, and I felt so false doing it, because I would just slap a texture on and say, here's what I did, but I didn't love it. So then that kind of led to Lightroom. And then we went to California, that retreat that you were at.
Yeah.
And I walked into Petals and Pop Shop. It was a beautiful shop. And I said to Xanthi, one of my friends who was there, I think I need a space. Like, I think I need a studio space. And I think I might want people to come, like, which was weird. Since has changed. We'll get to that. But anyhow, I came home and I decided I needed to find a space. Amongst all of that, my husband has cancer. It's like there's a lot going on amongst it. But we have this little window between his cancer and going back to work. We find a studio, and everything kind of changed from that. I ended up in this bigger space. I could pull back and create these imaginary, basically it's like this imaginary story I'm always telling in the bubble of this space. And it's all lovely and beautiful. And then there's real life outside of it. So And then I just kind of started showing up to that and sharing that and pulling back and inviting people to come along. And some did and some didn't. And Lightroom was a thing, and teaching Lightroom. And as new apps come along, okay, I'll catch up to that. I'll learn that. Why don't you, like, you know me, Jamie, come make films now. You should be making films.
Yeah.
Come on,
she loves films, as she says, and I hate them. And I'm like, and I said, all right, you know what? I get it. I've taken the class, and she's a fabulous teacher. I mean, truly, her online classes are amazing.
Oh, I want to learn more about film.
Oh, she's got a terrific film class.
I'm so in love with making film, but I had major resistance, like years, 8, no. Not that long, 5 years at least before I even tried. And now I can't imagine not doing it. So sometimes our pivots, our reblooms, they happen like as we're going along, as we're following our curiosity. And I don't think that's ever going to stop. Like, I don't know what will be next, but you know, there's going to be something.
And I would say this too, you have the beautiful studio, which I have been to, and it's gorgeous. And you had a couple of retreats, but that wasn't a comfortable space for you. I mean, it wasn't. Having retreats for an introvert is really tough.
Yeah, it was hard.
Hard. And it's also a little hard to get to her, by the way.
Yeah, a lot of logistics, but also I feel like what happened amongst that is along came these epic over the top retreats that started happening. Yeah. Like the very Instagrammy, like next level, like beyond belief retreats. And once those started, I was like, no, I don't even want to compete with that. But I don't know. So it was a season. That was a season.
I like that you try different things though. And you it's sort of like when you're trying on clothing in a store, you try it on, you look at it, and then maybe you even buy it and take it home, but then you decide, a month later, like, this isn't really me.
Now,
I don't think I really want to wear this one anymore.
Yeah, it feels it. I think I was just talking with one of my clients. Like, you go through a door, and you can stay there and think, well, I went through. I have to stay here and stay here and stay here. Or you decide, you know what, maybe this wasn't for me, and you go back and you open a different door. And we were talking about it because she's like trying to kind of figure out, like, is this really where I want to be? I've worked so hard on it. But like at some point, like, yeah, you either stay with it. I would relate that to those textures in Photoshop. Like, if I was still, like, imagine still doing that. Like,
oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. But yeah.
But it opened a door. It's interesting for me because at the time I was taking pretty lousy pictures too. Like, I was just getting into photography, and you're right, they covered a lot of sins.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, but it was a step forward. And then it was like, no, elevate, let's go here, let's elevate again. But at each pivot point along the way, you're learning, you've never stopped learning, nor have I. And we're always taking things, and it's like, oh, well, wait a minute. This is kind of this is it. I need to learn how to be a better photographer. I need to do something a little bit, and you kind of move and grow. Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and UrbanStems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention Rebloom. And a huge thanks to UrbanStems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Rebloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today.
I just wanted to talk about the fact that you mentioned that people all saw you in this certain way, and you were growing beyond that, and just having the chutzpah to just follow where you needed to go. Like, I always think about how do musicians feel when they have to sing the songs that they wrote and were excited about 20 years ago, and they still have to perform that song. That'd
be so hard.
So I think like having that, like having your passion and your curiosity outweigh what other people are imposing on you, I think is admirable.
Oh, well, thank you. But I think it's hard because when you're it's not like you're doing it that publicly. I have a small audience, but it is different when we're on the internet, right? Because we're kind of doing it out loud, what we're doing. And I remember that whole Photoshop thing, or when I remember writing an email to my list, and I'm like, I'm going to up my game, and I'm getting a new website. It's time to up my game. And I'll never forget this email. Like, still the fact that I remember it is, I got this reply, you're upping your game. Maybe you should get spell check, because not once have you spelt, I think it was possibilities, right? Because it's not that I don't know spell possibilities. It's just like my fingers didn't know. But that stuff like that, I had to work on that, like not just a day or two. Like, that followed me around for a while. I feel like I lost a little boldness from that one mean person. Yeah. Like, it took a while. Like,
and it's hard when you put yourself out there, and it's Lori. It's interesting because you are an artist too, and I know you're a licensed artist, and I'm sure sometimes you feel like you're creating for a certain look that people want. And I know you and I have had private conversations about creating from your heart and creating just because you want to. And I know with my own floral photography, it's interesting. And Kim and I have had this discussion. I'm like, okay, I need to pull back. I need to do this. I need to do that. But I always end up back. I don't know, where my heart leads me. And I do like the close-ups, and I mean, there's a part of the process that sort of, it's not that I don't get creative with it, but I think it's interesting, Kim, too. You've moved more into teaching, which then frees up your creative space to allow you to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
and it's like, you like it, don't like it,
yeah,
whatever. You're not selling. And I think that
true.
makes a difference for
Yeah,
people.
I would say for sure, like, yeah, because I don't know maybe the same, Lori, but like when the publisher started telling me what I was supposed to do, I don't do well with that. Like I would start to like be almost paralyzed, like, oh. So I think the teaching has allowed me to like, I'm only teaching, so I can do whatever. Like, I'm not selling the art or licensing.
Selling the art. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I'm struggling with now is I'm actually pretty good at taking direction because I started out as a graphic designer, and my job is to go into different companies, listen to what they want to communicate in their brand, and then do that. So I can be good at it, but I come to a point where it's like, but is that what I really want to do? And I was listening to you, Jamie, before, and you said, I need to do this, I need to do that. And I think that word need versus saying, I want to do this, like forever, I've always like, for whatever reason, I always get out of the way the stuff that I have to do or I need to do first. And I save the stuff I want to do as almost dessert. And I've been really working hard at kind of shifting that and finding time to do the things I really want to do first or alongside of the things I need to do.
Yeah.
So that dessert doesn't suffer. Like, so I'm not so full I can't eat dessert.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be so aware of it, right? Because you get in a pattern and it just is happening. And then you're like, oh, wait. Oh.
Yeah, well, there's the balance. There's the balance of the professional side of things that we all must do, fulfilling contracts or whatever somebody's hired us. When I'm hired to do a photo shoot, to your point, everybody's point, I do what they ask. You want this? I will give you that. And that's fine. I don't mind doing that. That's the way I like to work with them. But boy, it is nice to have that creative space, and we're all creatives. And so to have that opportunity. But what I love, Kim, is that you have always maintained that, but yet you've shifted. And each time, I'll text Kim, I'm like, which camera do I need? And she'll say, you need this one. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because she's already researched everything. But you love to research. You love tech. You are a little bit ahead. You're always looking at sort of what the new, I'm sure you know way more about AI or things that, that's all the new. But yet you're still grounding yourself in your creative heart. And that's important too.
I think it's a lucky balance, or to like a bit strange to love that techie part so much, but then also love the beautiful creative piece of it. Like, I don't know, I like, never buy me diamonds, like give me anything tech, and you're like new Mac, anything like that, like seriously.
Happy girl.
Yeah.
So I have a question. This is something I'm always curious about. So describe Kim as a little girl. Like, did you like to put things together? Did you like tech? Like, what things were you into when you were little?
So apparently I played by myself all the time. Like, my parents said I played in my room quietly always. My favorite gift I ever got was a clipboard, notepads, and pens from my uncle, who was a driving tester. I'll never forget it. And I would pretend on that a lot. Like, I would write in there, and like I have that whole other piece of my life about writing. So I love writing.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to read like the National Enquirer into my tape recorder, like I was an announcer.
Oh, wow.
So I was on a mic per se, but in my own space. Like, often it would be like in the bathroom, I would do that. Like, it was never like in front of people. So interesting, because I do sit here in my own space behind the mic, so to speak.
Doing that now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you know what, this is something that I know about you, but I think it's important to share because you have said that you're an introvert. And for an introvert, or for many people, it's hard to put themselves out there. And I know for you, it was, I remember back in the early days, I don't think you were on camera. But you've overcome that. I mean, how did you get to where you are now that you're like, oh, I can be on camera. I can talk to, how'd you get here?
I don't know, other than somewhere along all that was happening between what I was doing and going through the stuff, like I really just started to discover like how powerful it was, like thought work was, and I could decide to be different. So I used to have these thoughts, all of that story, like I'm too shy, I don't like to be around people. I remember on that retreat that we went to saying to, on the, like that time you wouldn't be on Zoom, you would be on conference calls.
Yes.
And all of us that were teachers for that retreat, it was like just having this pre-retreat call. And I say out loud on the phone, I don't really like people. Like I said that on the call.
Great.
I think I added something to that. I don't remember, but like I had all these stories, right? And then I just realized like, that's actually not true. Like I might not be great in crowds. I don't like crowds, but I do love connecting with people, and people can connect to me. And I'm like, I actually can do that. Like I'm good at that. I know how to
You're
teach.
great at that. And do you find it easier because you're connecting, but you're teaching?
Yeah.
That you're sharing what you're passionate about. Yeah.
Teaching helps. And then I just really love to share what I'm learning. And then I love to share like things to help people think they can do it. Like I really believe we can do it. So I'm passionate about that. So that's why I would turn on a podcast and hit record and tell you can do it, because I really believe, like, we have to believe that we can do it. So
we agree.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes a difference. Like if you made me go to a cocktail party with a bunch of people that I don't know, and I pretty much can guarantee I don't have a whole lot in common with, and I have to make small talk, that is so painful. But if I go to a retreat and within the first sentence, I fall in love with each person, because I know that we're all there as creative kindred spirits, and there really isn't any small talk. We all just get each other.
There is
like
no small talk.
Right from the get-go, we're just like, oh yeah, I could have coffee with you tomorrow, and we would be able to talk for an hour.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's partly too what I discovered when I got out of my little town bubble and went and I met you and other. I didn't think there was anyone like me. Like I just thought all people were like different than me. And then I walk into this space and realize there's like people like me. Like, maybe we're introverts and extroverts, but we're also like passionate. Like we love to talk about this stuff. We love to get open and real and raw, and surface talk like just isn't a thing. And I just don't do that well. And I don't I don't do any of that. I don't want to do it. I'm perfectly okay with saying no. I've said no so much nobody asks me, so that's okay too.
No,
around here.
But it's so true though, because we want to connect with real people about things that we feel passionate about, and that is the beauty of a retreat. It's also the beauty about social media, because you can find those kindred spirits. And you can find your people. And I think that has definitely evolved and changed. And I also think that people are very willing to give of themselves. I mean, I think you find that, everybody thinks that people are unapproachable, and that's not true. And as you have found people who connected with, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, is we know so many people. We've all had that conversation of primarily with women, but often men. We have men on this podcast, which we love too, who are headed down a path and they're like, yep, this is the path I'm on. And then boom, pivot. And they're trying to find their heart-centered work and find something that really fills them up and gives them joy. And that is, I think there are so many people out there wanting to do that. They just don't have the courage to do that. But when they hear from us, it's like, look, didn't happen overnight. We tried. We tried.
And they all
tried
connect you to where you're going. Like you can't skip them, right? It's like we have to do like all of the pieces, connecting the dots. Like, and that's where I can go back in the timeline to my son. Like that piece, if it didn't happen, and wouldn't have led me to the camera, and so on and so on and so on. Like all of it gets me to here. And here is beautiful. It's also sometimes really hard. That always comes along. Like, so to experience life that's hard sometimes and beautiful and get to do what you love to do.
Pretty amazing.
It is amazing. Like,
that's amazing.
I mean, I could, well, there's that saying, I'm unemployable, and I am unemployable. Like, I'm so glad I have something I can do, and it's just answering to myself. I mean, that's a gift. That's a gift.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a gift, and
yourself.
Yeah, answering to yourself and teaching others. I mean, think about how many people along this journey you have shared with and given to, and how they have grown and how they have bloomed or even rebloomed just by you helping them. And I am definitely one of I would not be here without you. I guarantee.
Thank you. But and then it's just a domino, right?
Yeah.
It's just a domino. Like, I mean, it can be one little conversation and we might not talk to them again. Like that woman I found in the magazine, like I haven't, I've lost touch with her, but she changed my life. Like, we just don't know.
We don't know, but I also think it's important to listen to the woman who you reached out with, and she answered positively, and let some of those possibility people who are critical of you, because that's just one person, throwing out a little bit of either jealousy sometimes or hate or whatever it may be. And, as we all know, I mean, life is short and we must follow our creative heart. We must. And for me, that has been the thing that has gotten me through the pain that I have gone through and continues to bring me comfort and healing, because and just following that path. And that's all we can do.
And imagine, like, it is amazing, Jamie, to have it's a lifeline to have something you're passionate about. Like, you truly, it's like from your heart, you care about it so much. Like, that can hold us up while we're going through unimaginables.
Unimaginable. Your son is doing well. Yeah, tell us about Bryce, because he's doing so well.
I read that he's on a path that...
Yeah, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Like, seriously, it had to be a miracle. From what we went to I think he's 7+ years now, completely, miraculously not... It's just not on his radar, drugs or alcohol. But not only that, like, he's in seminary school. And we'll never forget, we were sitting in the hospital room. My husband had cancer. We were in the city, and Bryce comes in, and he just kind of recently, a year or so of being sober. And he's like, I think I want to go to Providence, which was a seminary school. And John and I are like, okay, like not really having a lot of hope for him at the time. And sure enough, he got scholarships. He did it all on his own, got more scholarships, then went on, got scholarships for his school in Chicago. He gets to go to Italy to be a pastor, for the summer. I mean, he's been to Lithuania twice. Like, this is the kid in this town that, nobody had a hope in. Heck, it was very difficult to live in a small town when your son is making every weekend news with the thing he did, and I don't really know that there was anyone in our town that had that compassion. So I have a soft spot for the underdog, because and like to see where he is today, and I can't believe it. Like, how can I not believe there's miracles? Because
He's a rebloom story.
oh yeah,
He's a rebloom story. But you know, the people who had compassionate were the people who knew him best, and that was
yeah,
you, Kim,
yeah,
and John, and your parents. And you know, that's the thing. You know, you hope that anybody who's listening, whether they have people in their lives who struggle, you know, your family's always there for you. They
yeah.
definitely
Family's
are,
always
and
there.
they
And we
believe in
never
you.
know what people are going through.
You do not.
Right.
And I was the parent who would drive past the smoking corner of the high school in town and think, like, what's wrong with those parents? Like, what are their kids
Yeah.
like? You know, I was taught so many lessons from that because
Yeah.
you just
Before
never
you know it, you know, and as people know, it's, you know, we've lost our daughter, and, you know, mental illness is tough. Mental
It is.
illness it's very tough, and kids struggle, and certainly they've struggled. I've been a teacher for a long time, and I've seen a lot of decline in mental health just since the pandemic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, the one thing that my sweet girl was able to do is she would see the person in pain, and just to
Yes.
realize that there's a lot of people that are often suffering out there and suffering in silence, and
Yeah.
to really look, you know, and I do believe that just human connection, kindness, but also
Yeah. Takes so
helping
little.
other people
Takes so
to
little.
find their joy is so important.
Yeah.
Is so
Well, that's all
important.
we can do right now, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's all we can do.
yeah.
That's
And
all we
how
can do.
lucky are we to live in 2024 with podcasts and technology and
Yeah.
Zooms and like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, seriously.
Kim, you're teaching now. Are you? So tell us what you're doing now. You've rebloomed, and you're teaching, and tell us what you're up to now.
So mostly right now, I would say most passionate about teaching video or film, how to make them, how to edit them, to tell people they can do it. It's a beautiful way to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get past the discomfort, it's so rewarding to create. I can't believe I'm in love with it so much. I love it so much. And I work with women one-on-one, which, oh my gosh, I get to do so many things I love. But that is so cool to like get on a call with someone, you know, they're mostly our age, you know, 45, 50 plus. And like they have invested in themselves because like they have a dream. And they're ready to do it. And to see them just share so honestly, like all the things that are freaking them out, that are scary, uncomfortable. I think that's
Right.
so brave, and to be part of that, I love that. And yeah, I love to teach the tech. So yeah, I love it all.
And you love to continue to share your beauty, and you know, certainly follow Kim on Instagram. She's got an absolutely gorgeous feed that just will.
It is incredible. And now I'm going to do a deeper dive into your film work, because I'm so curious about that these days.
Yeah, it's
and
so.
paying
I mean,
more attention to even
once
watching
you start
movies.
to see it, yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And she creates, Kim teaches you how to create beautiful movies, not just, you know, quickie, whatever, TikToks. It's really about creating art.
Yeah, art, a sense of place, a feeling. I hope that's what comes through and what I love to create, and just a piece of quiet. And then, you know, you get Instagram, you can write whatever you want in your caption, which is, I mean, how lucky are we? I know we have all the feelings about it, but seriously, I can pop a video up there. I can share whatever I want.
Right.
Yeah.
About whatever I want, and whoever wants to read it can. And then I can do it again tomorrow. I mean,
or not.
Right. Yeah,
exactly. It's so,
take a month or two off. I often do. So,
well, I will give you the piece of advice that Kim gave to me. If you're not on social media, or at least on Instagram, get on there, because the connections are huge, and that is for sure.
Yeah. If you go into it, if you show up to it, like, this is so cool and a beautiful place, that's what you're going to get from it.
Right.
Absolutely. And just putting it out there. Well, Kim, after all the teaching and everything, what would you like to leave our listeners with? What piece of advice do you often like to give to people, or do you hear about reblooming?
I would say, gosh, I guess it's what I want to tell all the women. You can do it. It's going to be hard and you're going to be uncomfortable, but do it. Do it anyways. We're never going to regret that. There's no way you're going to regret being uncomfortable, trying it. You never know where it might lead you, but just do it. Life is so short, as we know.
Yeah.
And we're never this is the time, and we're not too old ever.
No,
I plan on I've got 40 years on here yet. So, and by then maybe I'll have this head still because AI will give it to me. I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well,
do it. I mean, that's not it's so just do it, but be uncomfortable. It's being okay with being uncomfortable.
mm-hmm.
And that's when we live our best. I feel the most alive, just in the comfort of doing the same thing. I mean, that's boring. Retirement? No. I mean,
right, exactly.
Keep going, keep moving.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave everyone with a quote, and it's from Alice Walker, and I love this one. It says, "Look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming."
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so let's all dream. Let's all dream about reblooming. Let's all dream about, we're all doing beautiful things now, but what is it that we dream about? And let's make that happen.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Kim, thank you so much for reblooming with us today.
So fun.
Amazing to meet you, Kim.
Guys. Yeah, it's so lovely to meet you, Lori. And thank you, Jamie, always.
Thank you. And everyone, thank you for joining us today. And please check out Kim on Instagram, and her website is at kimklassen.com. And we appreciate you all, and you'll find her links in our show notes. Lori, how fun was our conversation with Kim?
I love her. She's just so sweet and so lovely. Again, I want to be friends with her.
Well, I am so blessed to be her friend, and certainly to have met her. And yeah, we have to convince her to come back to the States. And at least, if not, we'll do like a masterminds or master creative something, because she is just incredible. And I think one of the things that is so important when you find that creative mentor that guides you, it just fills your heart, and to find someone that will teach you along the way is the biggest gift. And that is the gift that she has given to me every step of the way. I have learned so much. I've learned to be brave. I've learned to be creative. I've learned new technology that I didn't want to take on. I've learned all kinds of things, but I've learned most importantly to follow my heart.
Yeah. A couple things stuck with me, and I believe this to be true as well, is Kim talked about when she first started teaching online, and it wasn't perfect, and the microphone was, the sound wasn't great or whatever. And I look back on some of the first retreats that I hosted and how janky they were, and the mistakes we made, but we started somewhere,
like our podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're starting. And we're just trying.
Look back on our initial ones and go, "Oh my God,
what were we doing?"
But I think a lot of times that's one of the aspects that holds people back.
It does.
Is they have this picture in their mind of what perfection looks like, and so they don't even try. But you have to start somewhere, and you start, and then you learn, and then you make it better, and then you make it better. And so that was one point I took away. And the other thing was, and we touched on this a little bit, is that when you get to a point where you've outgrown something and you want to move on, I think having the passion or the curiosity outweigh everyone wanting you to stay where you were.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing a little of that now, because I kind of want to paint more for myself, but I have a lot of licensing clients that are still reaching out and asking me to, submit work. And so it's like, I still have my toe, well, more than my toe in licensing. And So I'm kind of living that. Like, what do I do with that? Because it was
Yeah.
something that I loved, made a great living at for the last 20 years. And I still love a lot of aspects about it, but there are things that are calling me. So I think we were talking about that and trying to navigate those things and figuring out how to make those switches. I think that was interesting.
Finding the balance. And I love that she found that balance. And I think that's an important lesson for us all as you bloom or even rebloom, is to find the balance between what you have to do, what you need to do, what you want to do. I think that was a big part of our conversation, and what fills your heart and your soul. And this was an incredible conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate it, and we look forward to another rebloom. We look forward to reblooming with you again. And so we leave you today. Thank you. I'm Jamie Jameson.
I'm Lori Siebert.
And peace, love, and rebloom. Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of Rebloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and rebloom, dear friends.